Welcome to How to Write the Future podcast. I'm your host, Beth Barany. I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer and also a writing teacher and creativity coach. I run this podcast to help you, fantasy and science fiction writers, and also anyone who cares about the future. My goal is to help you envision positive, optimistic futures so that we can create better tomorrows for all of us. Along those lines, I am taking questions and delivering answers in this series. So here is another question I got from a reader. They asked me, how do they bring fantasy into the contemporary world? What a great question. And this question was sparked because I asked people after they received my world building workbook for fiction writers. So if you would like to receive your own copy of that workbook, stay tuned to the end and I'll tell you how to get your own copy. All right, so how do you bring fantasy into the contemporary world with your story? Now, there's a lot of ways to do that, and there's several considerations that you need to have. The biggest consideration that I would recommend you think about is whether or not the fantasy elements are known to everybody or just a select few. It's very common in the urban fantasy genre for there to be a group of magical beings of various kinds, and what they do is hidden away from everybody else. Think Harry Potter, right? You've got the Muggle world, the ordinary, normal world, and then you've got Harry Potter and the wizards and the wizard school and all the wizarding that you can ever want. And those two worlds rarely collide. And when they do collide, obviously, got a lot of humor, a lot of conflict, but the job of the wizard takes place far away from normal people, from the Muggles. And a lot of urban fantasy does this. In fact, I was just reading a fabulous series by Sean Cunningham. So the name of the series is Hawthorne House. It's a 5-book series with a few short stories and novellas. And in that world, you have your magical beings who are separate from the humans, and the two sides hardly cross. A little bit, but not much. So you need to decide, is it going to be like that, urban fantasy, or is it going to be more like the superhero world, like Marvel and DC Comics, or the Green Arrow and Flash and Supergirl and Superman, where everybody knows about these superhuman people and the conflicts between them take place out in the open. So you've got the superhero type stories where the fantastical elements are known to everyone, or you have the urban fantasy trope main setup where the magical world is separate from the human world, even though they cohabitate in the same region, although those with magic often can go off to other realms. All right, so that's the first big consideration that you need to make. The second is you want to get clear on your rules of magic. Now, there are so many different ways to look at the rules of magic, and any active player of role-playing games could probably easily give you some criteria. I actually didn't grow up playing role-playing games very much, so I learned through reading books and then work on my own magical systems. But there's several key factors that you want to consider in your rules of magic. And if I leave anything out, chime in on the comments and let me know. So I would say, how do people acquire magic? Is magic given to you just because of being born? Is magic earned? Is magic learned? So earned through life experience, maybe money, and learned through school. So there's those options. Is it just given? Like Supergirl, she comes to Earth. I just finished watching the series. I adored it, the TV series. As soon as she comes into Earth's atmosphere, and actually as soon as she comes into the solar system and is affected by our yellow sun, she has superpowers that she didn't have before. And it's all there. She didn't earn it and she didn't learn it, although she has to learn how to master her skills and how to adapt. Whereas I'm thinking of the Jim Butcher series, he had magic because he was born magic, but he had to learn how to master and strengthen his magic. And he has to learn spells to be able to perform magic. The other thing you want to think about is, what is the cost to use magic? Supergirl can use her powers all day long and nothing can stop her, except, y'all know, kryptonite. Whereas in some magical systems, you see it all over the place. People use their magic and then they might fall asleep, or they could die if they use too much magic. So what is the cost of using magic? And also you need to understand, is the magic for a purpose? Are you only supposed to use your magic to fight evil or hunt? Or sweep the kitchen floor? What are the approved uses of magic? And then I guess another factor is magic desired or not? When magic arrives in their life through birth or through learning, is it something they want? Harry Potter, he seemed to really delight in having magic. I have a character who does not delight in having magic and has to learn how to trust her magic. So are people at ease with magic? Is it a world where everyone is okay with it? Is it a world where magic is only for high status people or for people who live in a certain area? So you can develop all of those rules of magic, cost to use magic, cost to acquire magic, how magic is acquired, and how people feel about magic, and the purpose of magic. Just to reiterate, the very first part you need to decide is, are the fantastical elements in your story known to everybody, or only those who are also with those same powers? All right, so I hope that was helpful in how you bring fantasy into the contemporary world. You really need to decide the relationship between what you might call the mundane world and what you might call the fantastical elements. That's it. If you would like to get your hands on a world-building workbook, then check out my world-building work for fiction writers. The link to acquire it for yourself, this free workbook, is in the description, or just go to howtowritethefuture.com. All right, that's it for this week. Signing off, write long and prosper.